If you've been following my videos, then you're probably aware that fossilization is kind of a big deal, being pretty dang rare. And just in case you need a quick refresher, it's thought that less than 1% of all deceased animals undergo this process. Therefore, it's not crazy to call any fossil both rare and unique. However, like everything, there is of course levels to this. And this has made me think, what exactly are the rarest of the rarest fossils or paleo finds that we've discovered thus far? And apparently, it's kind of hard to say, as I quickly came to realize that it's kind of impossible to say assuredly, especially since what would constitute as the rarest is pretty subjective. But, in my oh-so-arduous research, I did stumble upon a few discoveries that stuck out more than others, some of which I even legitimately thought were fake at first. And this included one image that upon first seeing, I mistook for a monster from Greek mythology, when really, it was a scientific sketch. I mean, see for yourself. At first, you might be thinking you're looking at a newborn hydra, or some sort of long-lost kaiju. But this is in fact a real creature, and not of the alien kind either, but instead an earthly animal that lived long ago in a galaxy not so far away. The Hyphalosaurus, meaning the submerged lizard. But you know, even if it was a kaiju, we'd be good as long as we could throw a couple of F-111 aardvarks at it from today's sponsor, War Thunder. And while we're at it, why not throw a few heavy bombers like the Avro Lancaster or P-88, and maybe call in a few Iowa-class warships, which guess what, are all available for battle in War Thunder, the most comprehensive vehicle combat game on planet Earth. Available on PC, consoles, and mobile, with over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, ships, and more, all from 10 major nations, and from over 100 years of warfare for absolute vehicular battle debauchery. Shoot things from a car, shoot things from a plane, shoot things from a boat, all the while just using whatever controller you have. And yes, you can do all of this and more in War Thunder, while immersing yourself in realistic graphics, authentic sound effects, and a community of over 95 million players. And my favorite part? No health bars. Every vehicle's intricate modeling down to every detail, so damage is actually realistic instead of having fat red bars hanging above you, which is then also combined with X-ray footage so you can see exactly what happens when you get blown up. Now I know what you're thinking, that sounds pretty awesome, and there's no way it can get any better. But guess what? It can, because it's free. You can play it on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and mobile. Again, all for free. So sign up using the links in the pinned comment or description to not only play, but also get a massive bonus pack for both new and returning players that haven't played for at least 6 months on PC and consoles, which includes the exclusive vehicle decorator, Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium account, which by the way, is only available for a limited time. They first appeared during the early Cretaceous period, and were, let's say, an odd bunch, and not because they had 2 heads, as that fact is actually what makes this specimen so rare, as this guy is polycephalic, meaning it had more than one thinker, and in this case, also possessed 2 necks. This amazing find was made in 2006 by the UK Royal Society within China, and was so rare that the paleontologists first thought that it must have been 2 separate specimens, and they were just missing a second body. However, the remains were well preserved enough that after it was fully analyzed, there was absolutely no mistaking that this was a double-headed reptile, making it also the oldest example of polycephaly, and the only known case where one is fossilized, making it literally one of a kind. When the news of its discovery was first made, there was naturally quite a bit of buzz around it, and some confusion, as it was reported to be a 2-headed dinosaur. But sadly though, for the sensationalists, Hyphalosaurus was no terrible lizard, rather an aquatic member of the ancient Choristodera, a now extinct order of diapsids, which were widespread from the mid-Mesozoic all the way to the recent Cenozoic. It contained members such as the Champsosaurus, who is well known for living alongside the T-Rex. And the group as a whole differed greatly in appearance and size, with the Hyphalosaurus specifically superficially resembling a plesiosaur, albeit a miniature one at that, as this guy was fun-sized, with fully grown adults only reaching about 3 feet or 1 meter in length. So luckily, they get the safety approval stamp for time travelers. You also wouldn't have to worry about seeing this creature too often either, as they were extremely adapted for aquatic lives, being pretty much found exclusively within the deepest parts of lakes, where they utilize webbed feet, a flattened tail, and needle-like teeth to hunt, with prey mainly consisting of tiny fish and soft-bodied invertebrates. Not super duper exciting, but exceedingly effective, and the Hyphalosaurus has actually provided paleontologists with thousands of specimens, but of course only this one has come with 2 heads, which is for sure remarkable, but at the same time, a little bit sad, as these guys did not get a chance at life due to its birth defect. And we know this because the specimen's body size was extremely small even for this genus, leading to the assumption that it died early in infancy, or was even already deceased at birth. And this does kind of check out because we do know that polycephaly in general does tend to greatly reduce lifespan in the affected. And what's kind of interesting when you think about it is that this fossil is obviously reptilian, And one interesting tidbit is that in modern times, polycephaly is often noted for being much more common in reptiles compared to mammals, and specifically happens quite a bit in snakes and turtles, who are also both diapsids. Now, it's not exactly known why this happens, but it does lead to the fascinating notion that a two-headed dinosaur could also be out there as well, seeing that they too were diapsids. So definitely a rare find, and one with somewhat sad undertones. But let me tell you, it doesn't hold a candle to the heartstrings pulled by another extremely rare fossil find, which shows just about the only known instance of two prehistoric animals cuddling. And to make things even crazier, the cuddlers aren't even the same species. This all started in 2013, when a team of paleontologists operating in the early Triassic portion of the Karoo Basin stumbled upon the fossilized remnants of a burrow. Now, an ancient burrow alone is pretty remarkable and rare in itself, but there was also something hidden inside, a Thrinaxodon, a type of carnivorous cynodont which had survived the Permian extinction and was about the same size as a fox. Specimens belonging to this species had been found in burrows before, and perhaps because of this, not much interest was initially paid to its presence, and the Thrinaxodon went unexamined for quite a long time. However, thanks to a bit of luck, the cast was eventually scanned at a facility in Europe, and they found something the first review missed, and that was an entire other creature in the burrow. And get this, it wasn't a Thrinaxodon, nor any other kind of cynodont for that matter, but instead an amphibian of all things, Brumastega. It belonged to the Temnospondyli order, which first appeared during the early Triassic. So what on earth was the Brumastega doing alongside a Thrinaxodon in its den? And not just alongside actually, but rather tightly pushed up together like two peas in a pod. And at first we thought the answer was pretty easy, being that this was no cuddle sesh, but rather a predation attempt that was rudely interrupted. Yet, this hypothesis quickly fell apart, as neither animal were the other's typical prey, and none of their skeletons showed any signs of the two having fought. Although, in their analysis, they did note that the amphibian was injured, having suffered several fractured ribs on the right side and 2 bite marks on the roof of the skull. But evidence suggests that these injuries occurred prior to it entering the burrow, and are now actually believed to have been the spark that ignited this odd situation to begin with the idea being that after being injured, paleontologists reckon that the Brumastega, exhausted and now in pain, stumbled upon the den and decided to venture within, in the hopes of finding some shelter. It's also believed that it chose an underground area instead of something above because of the early Triassic's intense heat and aridity. Within, the Brumastega encountered the Thrinaxodon, who did one of either 3 things. First, it might have attempted to kick the new roommate out, but couldn't manage, and thus had to simply put up with the unwelcomed cuddles. Second, it could have just been a good dude and simply paid no attention to the amphibian, allowing it to share its home. And then the third and final option is that the Thrinaxodon might have been in a state of something called aestivation, which would make sense given the area's extreme seasonal aridity. And for the uninitiated, aestivation is basically a state much like hibernation, except for the heat and dryness instead of the cold. And therefore, while in it, the Thrinaxodon wouldn't have bothered with trying to evict the Brumastega in the first place. But whatever the situation was, once inside, the two got cozied up with each other, as their position showed the amphibian resting on the right side of the Thrinaxodon, with their bodies tightly pressed against each other. Unfortunately though, this adorable scene would ultimately conclude with tragedy, as the fact they were fossilized together, of course, means that they, well, died together. And the current hypothesis is that whilst resting, or napping, a massive flash flood descended upon the area, thus flooding the burrow and slamming the pair into one of the corners, rapidly drowning them. Unpleasant to say the least, and very sad. Yet this being said, a fossil doesn't have to be sad in order to qualify as extremely rare. Sometimes it can just be itself, with the craziness stemming from who the fossil actually belonged to. And this is perhaps best seen in one of the rarest primate specimens of all time, and in fact, one of the rarest human specimens of all time. Back in 2012, Russian archaeologists were excavating the Denisova cave, which is located in the Altai Mountains of Siberia. The location was well known for being the discovery site of the Denisovans, and these guys are an extinct species of humans which disappeared around 30,000 years ago, making them one of the most recent groups of humans to have lived. And during the excavation, researchers located a single fragment of a long bone that was then grouped with almost 2,000 other poorly fragmented bones, which were visually unremarkable. But eventually, some of these pieces of bone underwent further testing, including genetic testing. And in the case of the long bone, peptide mass fingerprinting and mitochondrial DNA analysis were employed. And the results were a bit shocking to say the least, as this specimen, now dubbed Denny, turned out to be a human hybrid. Yeah, sometimes real life is stranger than fiction. And she wasn't